military training, who was in the military. You know, I never went to Iraq. I did go to Afghanistan. And, you know, I'm supposed to be somebody who's, like Ethan talks about, is supposed to be hardened to this kind of thing, you know? You think that after being through training and being through that experience that you would be hardened to the idea of people dying in a place like Iraq. And we've been doing this presentation across the country, and I must have watched this thing at least 300 times by now. And still, every time I watch it, I have an emotional reaction to it. I still, especially when I hear Ethan talking about those children, which are so often the first casualties in a place like this. You know, it tears me up. It eats the heart out of me. I mean, does anybody feel the same way when you watched this? When you saw the
I was crying.
When you saw the children, right? Did you hear what he said after they realized that they had just shot children? The guy said, well, it's their fault for bringing their kids into a battlefield. What's with that? I mean, a bunch of Americans just shot children younger than the age of 10, and their whole response is, it's their fault for bringing their kids into a battlefield. Well, the truth is, because of the wars and the nature of the wars that the U.S. is fighting, these battlefields are really people's neighborhoods. I mean, you saw there were houses all over the place. The soldiers ran into the house to get one of the men from the house to help clean up the little kids, you know? This so-called battlefield, this is somebody's backyard. This is somebody's block, you know? And they got helicopters flying overhead, shooting rounds through people's houses, into vans of people trying to pick people up off the street and take them to the hospital so they can get help. I mean, this isn't really the stuff they show you in the recruiting commercials, is it? This isn't a very good advertisement for the military, is it? Has anybody seen this video before? You have. You were in the class before, I recall. You were here. You were too. Were you with us before?
I seen it when I was in Hardy's class.
Yeah, prior. They don't really show this kind of stuff, do they? I mean, if everybody knew that this is the kind of thing they could expect if they joined the military, they may not join, would they?
Mm-mm.
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't, because, you know, we get used to looking at things like this, especially our generation, young people, as like a video game, right? I mean, some of that stuff just looks like, you know, helicopter simulators that we played, or, you know, what do they call it, Medal of Honor or whatnot. That's a big game. Everybody's playing that now. They don't really go through what it's actually like, you know? You just squeezing a trigger in a game maybe and watching things fall down. It's interesting when Ethan talks about coming up and seeing the aftermath. What does it look like after these things happen? What are people turned into by things like machine guns? It's carnage. And he talks about the effect that had on him. That's another side that we don't often see. When we think in America about soldiers and about veterans, we've been told that there's a certain amount of honor that goes along with it, right? And a certain amount of pride. Hey, how you doing, man?
What's up, Joe?
And, you know, we think of soldiers as being people who march in parades and to salute the flag and to feel, you know, very grateful to be American and feel happy to serve. They don't really show what actually goes on, though. You know, there are soldiers out there. Maybe some of you folks know people who were in Iraq and Afghanistan. Do they ever really talk about the specifics of what they went through? Well, maybe one of the reasons they haven't is because what you saw in this video isn't like a rare happening. This is life every day for the people of Iraq and Afghanistan, and Pakistan now, and Yemen, and other places. This is the reality. It's not like World War II where you had two lines of soldiers, everybody in uniform, facing off and shooting at each other. When I was in the military, I realized that the wars that the U.S. were fighting were genocidal. Before I even got to Afghanistan, I was in training in Germany. And we have what's called the OPFOR in the Army, the opposing forces. And what they are is they're soldiers who dress up like the enemy, and instead of using bullets, people attach lasers to their weapons. And you just train, you know, and their job is to act like the enemy, so act like the insurgency in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I got to this training site, and I looked at these guys who we were supposed to be pretending to fight. And all of them were just dressed like Arab civilians. Nobody was wearing a uniform. Everybody was just dressed like civilians. And I turned and I looked at one of the sergeants and I said, it could be really easy if we're training to shoot at people that look like this to accidentally kill civilians in Iraq and Afghanistan. Why are we training to shoot at people in civilian clothing? And he said, well, this is what the enemy looks like. This is who we're fighting. We're not fighting an army, we're fighting an insurgency, and they look like everybody else, so we have to train like this. Well, the truth of the matter is, like 95% of the people in Iraq and Afghanistan carry weapons because it's a dangerous place, it's a war zone, and there's no way to tell the difference.
Interruption. At this time, we would like all seniors to report to the cafeteria. All seniors, please report to the cafeteria. Thank you.
Oh, she's coming next.
But anyway, like, I realize we are training to shoot at 95% of the people in these countries. And that's what happens when you do things like this. People who are just regular civilians holding things like cameras, standing on a corner trying to do their jobs, suddenly turn into targets and get killed. And this happens all of the time. And Ethan talks about the effects of this. He talked about being in Iraq and wishing that a sniper would shoot him, or that somebody would blow him up and kill him, so that he wouldn't have to feel the pain he was feeling anymore. I mean, how often do you see that in the recruiting commercials? One of the interesting things it's interesting, it's horrible, is that everybody thinks about, oh, maybe I shouldn't go to war because I might get killed. Somebody might shoot me while I'm in combat. I could die in war, and then I could never go to college or whatever. Well, the interesting thing is, more soldiers now die from suicide, from killing themselves after they come back from these wars. More soldiers die from killing themselves because they can't live with what they experienced. Things like what Ethan experienced and talks about here. More people kill themselves and actually die downrange. Even if you make it back in one piece, if you are mentally and emotionally broken and feeling suicidal, sure, the Army may give you a little money for college, but what good is that going to do you? There's consequences to this that go very, very deep. How many people have heard of post-traumatic stress disorder? Well, that's really good. Wow. A lot of you have. Do you know that's something connected with being in the military? You know that's something that's connected to being in the war. It is a condition. It is a mental illness that manifests itself throughout your entire life. PTSD isn't one of those things that you can cure. Like, for example, a lot of types of depression. You can be very depressed, and you can still, through therapy and medication, come back and live a normal life. PTSD is not a curable condition. It is something that you carry with you throughout your entire life, and is something that the military already says hundreds and hundreds of thousands of soldiers have. And I can tell you 3 or 4 times as many are actually experiencing symptoms of it. I, in fact, haven't met too many veterans in my lifetime that did not display some type of symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder. And I'm here with people who've worked with veterans for another year, and they can probably corroborate exactly what I'm saying. There are consequences. Go ahead.
One thing that I was hoping that you could speak to, connected to PTSD and what you were talking about overall in terms of what it means to be part of the military, is what is the mission statement of the Army? What is their stated goal?
Right. Well, that's a good question. Does anybody out here know? What is the mission of the U.S. Army? Or even the military. We can say the military because it's all the same.
Just to defeat the enemy.
Defeat the enemy. Kill or be killed. That's more or less the case, and that's a good point, because for a long time in this country we've talked about the military as being like a nation-building force or a humanitarian force. We think that, when a situation goes bad in a country, we send our soldiers and they're there to help. They help build infrastructure, and they help bring medicine to people, and they help feed people who are starving. And this is the image that the United States government tries to put out to the world, that the U.S. is like a peacekeeping force and a humanitarian force. But it's a fact that the mission statement of at least the U.S. Army, which is what I was in, is to engage and destroy the enemies of the United States in close combat. Pretty much we can distill that down to engage and destroy. Aim at things and shoot them. And that is directly linked to post-traumatic stress disorder. Engaging in things like this, being there, either killing or feeling like you could be killed. All of these things will bring things like post-traumatic stress disorder about. And if not that, there's 1,000 lesser problems that you can contract from being in the military. From actual health problems, there's a lot of health issues that go along with serving in the military, to even issues of things as sacred as like your sexualities, you know? The military, the Department of Defense admits that 1 out of 3 women who join the military are sexually assaulted while they're in the military. 1 out of 3. And guys, it's no better for guys. The statistic is 1 out of 5 men who join the military will be sexually assaulted while they are in the military. And yet a recruiter wants to come to you and tell you that if you join the military, they'll make a man of you or a woman of you. You got to think about these things because they are serious risks that go along with service that you are not getting from the recruiters, and you're certainly not getting from the television, or you're certainly not getting it from the video games we're playing. So let's talk about the recruiters for a sec, because I know we got about 10 more minutes, maybe 15. Do you guys see recruiters on your campuses? Do they ever come here, talk to young people? I know I've seen recruiting billboards in the neighborhood. Has anybody here ever spoken to a recruiter before? Yes, ma'am.
I have a relative who was a recruiter, and he said that he'd rather be in the field than be a recruiter.
Why didn't you like recruiting?
He didn't like lying to people about what they did.
So-
Drinking all night and stuff.
So let me get this straight.
He said they have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
He was a recruiter, and he admitted to you that he doesn't like lying to young people.
That's some heavy stuff.
That's some really heavy stuff. That is.
There was another,
Right
sorry,
behind
I
you,
don't
yes,
know
ma'am.
your names.
I have a cousin that he like comes or whatever to visit and stuff like when he comes back,
Mhm.
and he was telling us how like his experience, like when he see people get killed and his emotions and everything, but he go through everything.
Does he talk about the specifics of what he saw, or just how he feels now?
But like like this everything like this, the stuff that he sees right in front of him that happens right here, and he like he told me, I mean, he cried and shit, but.
That's good, actually.
Yeah.
That's really good. That means he's coming to terms with what he went through. One of the problems is so many people, so many soldiers will come back from these places and they will be hurting and they'll feel so sad, but they've been told they have to be so strong that they can't show that emotion. And what they end up doing is drinking or doing drugs and living crazy lifestyles and getting themselves into situations where they wind up in jail. So many people in jail are veterans. They wind up homeless. More veterans in this country are homeless than any other demographic. It's something like 1 in 4 in New York City are veterans of these wars, specifically because they may not have been able to deal with what they went through as your family member has been dealing with it. And that's very good. I have to say, as a veteran, to hear that he's able to talk about it and to express emotion and to express his regret on a human level says that he might be all right. And you just keep loving him and keep giving him that support, because you have no idea. And the fact is, we don't want you to have an idea. Nobody needs to go and experience the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan to understand that they're wrong. We can make that decision here, and we can protect each other from it. Because the truth of the matter is, there are people getting filthy rich off of these wars, and that's why they're going on. There are old white men making billions of dollars. No, I'm serious. Billions of dollars, blood money off of these wars. But you know what? They can't fight. These guys can't throw down. They're old fat men. They can't do anything. No, they got to get kids to fight for them. They got to come find you and convince young people that they have an interest to go fight their wars so that the old men can get rich. They're like lions. They prey off of kids. They want you to go fight their racist and genocidal wars. And just like lions, you know, they look big and bad, and they drive big cars, and they're flashy, and you're like, wow, that's a lion, right? But when a lion hunts, what does it go after?
Them smaller than
The
them.
weakest one, the weakest and the smallest, the ones that they think they don't have to fight for. Likewise, when they're going after kids, trying to get them into the military, they don't want to fight for it. They want to get the ones who already want to get in. They want to get the easy targets. They don't, for example, we even try to get recruiters to come debate with us sometimes in front of the classroom so we can, flush out all of this stuff. And they don't want to do that. That's work. They want the easy targets. So what do? You got to protect your friends. When you hear your friends talking about, I spoke to a recruiter, I saw a commercial, I'm thinking about joining the military, you got to show them things like this.
So that's a good segue, since we don't have that much time. One thing that I just wanted to underscore is that if you guys and your friends, if this generation doesn't say yes to the recruiters and instead resists these wars, if they don't have troops, they can't fight. Resisting recruiters is a key way that you can stop these wars, that this generation can stop these wars. We have a big responsibility, but we have an amazing opportunity to leave a mark. There was the generation that, were the Freedom Riders. Who knows about the Freedom Riders? A few people. Who were the Freedom Riders? Who knows?
They went from the north to the south, and they would sit in the train with the colored people or black people and